Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I was 22 the year everything finally caught up with us, and if I'm being honest, I'd already been living on borrowed time for a while before that night ever happened. Back then, my mornings smelled like cheap coffee and cigarette smoke because I worked the opening shift at a little liquor store wedged between a pawn shop and a closed-down barber place. The kind of store where the bars were on the windows, not just for show, and you learned real quick which customers to joke with and which ones to ring up fast and quiet. I wore a wrinkled polo with the store logo stitched over my chest and pretended I was just another guy trying to pay rent. Technically, that was true. It just wasn't the whole truth. Most nights after my shift, I didn't go straight home. That's where they came in. I met most of the guys leaning against the counter during slow hours, talking trash about the weather, the local teams, or whoever got locked up that week. We were all about the same age, early 20s, except for Rourke. Rourke was in his early 30s, maybe 32 or 33, but he carried himself like someone older. He had that calm confidence that made people listen even when he wasn't raising his voice. Most of us didn't have dads around growing up. Mine took off when I was 10. Rourke filled that gap without even trying. He'd been in the army, done a couple tours overseas, seen places none of us could even pronounce. When he talked, we shut up. When he laughed, we laughed. When he said a situation felt wrong, we trusted him, at least most of the time. Rourke had just gotten out of county a few months before I started hanging with them. Drug charges. Nothing major, but enough to put his name on a list. He wasn't a big-time dealer, not even close, but he had connections and ambition, which in our city was sometimes worse than being a heavyweight. Around here the trade was quiet and controlled. Same suppliers, same corners, same unspoken rules. Nobody rocked the boat. Rourke rocked the hell out of it just by existing. I knew I was different from the others. I still lived with my mom at the time, helped pay bills, kept my nose clean enough that I didn't have a record. My mom worked double shifts at a nursing home and somehow still found the energy to worry about me every single day. "You don't need those boys," she told me more than once, standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed. "Nothing good comes from people who always got money but never got jobs." I'd nod, kiss her on the cheek and say, "I know, Ma." And then I'd still meet them later that night. Looking back, the only reason I stayed free is because I learned to listen to something inside me. Call it instinct, gut feeling, God, luck, whatever. There was this quiet voice that told me when to walk away. I didn't always listen, but when I did, it saved my life. That night in 2011 was the loudest it ever screamed. It was raining hard. The kind of rain that turns streetlights into blurry halos and makes everything smell like wet asphalt. Rourke picked me up in his old sedan, along with 3 other guys, Lennox, Pierce, and Solly. Solly was the one who'd invited us out. Said there was a party going on, real low-key, just drinks and music at some apartment complex across town. "I know where it is," Solly said from the back seat, already buzzed. "Relax, man." Rourke glanced at him in the rear view. "You said that last time." Yeah, I got it now." We drove for 20 minutes, then 30. Solly kept pointing left, then right, then telling Rourke to turn around. The tension in the car got thick. Lennox started tapping his fingers against the door. Pierce muttered, "Man, this is some bullshit." When we finally pulled into the complex, Solly pointed at a random building. "That's it. I'm sure." I didn't hear music, didn't see people coming or going. No lights flashing, no laughter spilling out into the night. "I'm gonna check," I said, already opening the door. Rourke frowned. "Be quick." I walked toward the building, rain soaking through my hoodie, and that's when I noticed another car parked just off to the side of ours. Engine running, windows dark. Something tightened in my chest. I took one more step, and that inner voice hit me like a shove. "Stop." I didn't know why, but I listened. I stepped back behind the corner of the building instead of walking forward. I held my breath. 5 seconds later, everything exploded. Gunfire ripped through the night, bright flashes lighting up the rain. The sound was deafening, sharp cracks echoing off concrete. I dropped to the ground, curling into myself, heart slamming so hard I thought it might burst. The shooting felt endless. Then tires screeched, and the other car peeled out of the lot, disappearing into the darkness. I stayed frozen for a moment, convinced they'd come back for me. When I finally moved, my legs felt like rubber. I leaned around the corner, half expecting a bullet to catch me in the face. Rourke's car sat there, riddled with holes. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air, mixing with rain and blood. I opened the driver's door. Rourke was gone. Blood soaked into the seat, pooling beneath him. I gagged, fighting the urge to throw up. In the back, Lennox and Pierce were slumped over, unmoving. I was about to close the door when I heard it. A breath. It was faint, wet, barely there. I turned and saw Solly twitching. "Oh my God," I whispered. I yanked open the other door and dragged him out just as sirens wailed in the distance. The cops and ambulances arrived seconds later, red and blue lights cutting through the rain. They questioned me for hours. I told the truth, the whole truth. At first they looked skeptical, but the scene spoke for itself. I sat on the curb while they zipped up body bags. 3 of my friends gone. At the hospital, I waited with Solly's girlfriend, both of us silent, exhausted. Just before dawn, a doctor came out and told us Solly would live. 2 bullets in his liver, but he'd make it. Nobody ever got arrested. Years later, I heard one of the shooters took his own life. I didn't celebrate, but I felt something like relief. After that night, I walked away from that life for good. Moved across town, new friends, new routines. Sometimes I still think about Rourke, about how close I came to dying for nothing. That inner voice never spoke that loud again, but I still listen. I remember the smell first. Grease from the grill, sweet smoke drifting over the backyard, cheap fireworks popping somewhere down the block like knuckles cracking in the dark. It was late summer in Cinder Falls, the kind of night where the air sticks to your skin and every sound carries just a little farther than it should. I stood near the back fence with a red cup in my hand, listening to my uncle laugh too loudly, pretending, like the rest of us, that this was just another family party. But it wasn't. That night was my cousin Ryland's 18th birthday. The night he was supposed to turn things around. The night that took everything from us. I didn't know it then, obviously. None of us did. If I had, I would have grabbed Bree's hand and pulled her inside. I would have told Ryland to forget the truck, forget the party, forget the whole damn idea of celebrating in public. But life doesn't work like that. Life doesn't give you warnings you can hear over the music. It just happens. Ryland had been trouble since he was a kid. Not evil, not broken, just wired wrong maybe. Restless, always pushing, always testing where the line was. I remember him at 7 years old, sticky fingers and wide eyes, getting hauled back to my aunt's house by a cop who looked more tired than mad. He took a candy bar on a dare, the officer said, rubbing his face. No charges, just keep an eye on him. That was the first time. After that came the fights. Schoolyard scraps at first, then broken noses and suspensions. By 13, he'd been caught sneaking into a closed pool with older kids. By 15, there were whispers about him running with people his parents didn't know, people who didn't show up in daylight. My Uncle Holt tried everything. Calm talks at the kitchen table, long drives where he'd say nothing at all, just waiting for Ryland to fill the silence. When that didn't work, the yelling started. Doors slammed, voices raised. My Aunt Maribel cried more than she slept. The worst part was this. Ryland didn't come from nothing. He had a good home, 2 parents who loved him stupid, a little sister, Bree, who thought he hung the moon. That confused people. Folks like to believe trouble has a reason you can point at. Poverty, abuse, bad neighborhoods. Rylan had none of that. And yet, by 17 he was talking about the boys, about loyalty and respect, about how some people had his back in ways family never could. When Holt found out, he was thinking about getting jumped in. That was it. That night, the whole family gathered in the living room. Cousins, grandparents, even my mom drove in from 2 hours away. It wasn't planned like a movie intervention, but that's what it turned into. One by one, we talked. "I love you, man," I told him, my voice shaking. "But this road? It don't end where you think it does." Maribel cried so hard she could barely breathe. Holt didn't yell. That scared me more. He just sat there, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on his son. "You ain't bad," he said quietly. "You're just lost, and lost kids get eaten alive out there." Rylan broke. I mean, really broke. He sobbed into his hands like he was 7 again, like the weight of every bad choice finally caught up to him all at once. He promised he was done. Promised he'd cut ties. Promised he wanted better. For the first time in years, I believed him. So did his parents. That meeting happened 3 weeks before his 18th birthday. Long enough to hope. Long enough to plan. The party was Holt's idea. 18, he said, clapping his hands together. Man's age, we do it right. They went all out. Food for days. Music loud enough to make the neighbors peek through their blinds. Family packed into the house and spilling into the yard. Even some of Rylan's old school friends showed up, the clean ones, the ones who'd gone straight. And then there was the truck. A brand new F-150 midnight blue parked in the driveway like a promise. Holt waited until after cake to reveal it. Strawberry, Rylan's favorite, frosting smeared everywhere because Bree insisted on helping cut it. "Close your eyes," Maribel said, smiling through nerves. When Holt dropped the keys into Rylan's palm, I swear the kid stopped breathing. "No way," he said. "You're messing with me." Holt shook his head. "Go on. It's yours." Rylan walked toward that truck like it might vanish if he moved too fast. Bree sprinted past him, laughing, climbing into the bed like it was a playground. "Best birthday ever!" she yelled. We were all smiling. That's the part that hurts the most. I heard the car before the shots, low engine, slow roll, tires crunching gravel just beyond the fence. My head turned without thinking. Then, pop, 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 pop. At first my brain refused to understand it. Fireworks, I thought. Someone being stupid. Then glass exploded. The truck's windows shattered inward. Metal screamed. Someone screamed louder. I saw Rylan fall. He hit the ground hard, twisting, blood already spreading through his shirt like ink and water. The blue truck was suddenly pocked with holes, smoke curling off the hood. The car peeled off down the street, engine roaring, gone before anyone could even scream a license plate. Maribel's scream ripped through the night. Holt dropped to his knees beside his son, hands shaking, pressing down on wounds he didn't understand. Rylan was conscious, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing like he couldn't get enough air. I'm here," Holt kept saying. "Stay with me, buddy. Stay with me." Someone called 911. Someone else was vomiting in the bushes. I stood there frozen, ears ringing, staring at the truck. And then I realized Bree was quiet. Too quiet. "Bree," my grandma yelled. "Bree, baby." Panic spread like fire. We ran, around the house, inside, back to the driveway. And then I saw Holt stand up, lifting something from the truck bed. It took my brain a second to register that it was her. Bree's body was limp, her hair soaked dark, her small chest still. Holt screamed her name and dropped to the ground, trying CPR with hands slicked red, switching between her and Rylan like he couldn't choose which child to save. The paramedics came fast, too fast and too slow all at once. They worked on Bree the whole ride. She was pronounced dead in the ER. Rylan survived. Barely. 3 surgeries. 2 days where the doctors wouldn't say anything except, wait. When he finally woke up, they told him about Bree. He didn't scream, didn't cry. He just stared at the wall like something inside him shut off. The police came, asked questions, pressed him hard. Ryland talked more to them than he did to us. He didn't see faces, he said, but he knew who ordered it, knew why. Walking away has a price. The case made headlines. A little girl killed at a birthday party. The pressure was insane. Eventually, someone flipped. Names were given, arrests made. At trial, nearly a year later, Ryland took the stand with a cane and a limp that never went away. He pointed. He spoke. His voice didn't shake. Both shooters were convicted. Death row, technically. In our state, that mostly means time. At least they're off the streets. Ryland's body healed. His mind never did. He told me once, years later, during the holidays, sitting on the porch with beers we didn't really want. My dad warned me, he said. Said one day my chickens would come home to roost. I thought I was different. He stared out at the street, jaw tight. I wasn't. Sometimes the lesson comes too late. Sometimes it takes everything with it. That night in Cinder Falls taught me that love doesn't always save you, but it tries like hell. I don't remember much from my childhood, not in clear pictures anyway. Most of it feels like static. Faces without names, places without edges. But there's one image that never faded, no matter how hard I tried to bury it. A little boy sitting cross-legged on a kindergarten classroom floor, face red, eyes swollen, crying so hard he could barely breathe. That was the first time I saw Rowan Hale. It was our first day of school. The room smelled like crayons and disinfectant, and half the kids were losing their minds because their parents had just walked out the door like they were never coming back. Rowan was crying louder than anyone. Full-on panic, snot, hiccups, the whole thing. I wasn't crying. I don't know why. I remember sitting there swinging my feet, watching him like he was a fire alarm going off. The teacher knelt beside him and said, Hey, it's okay, buddy." He looked up at her and screamed, "No, it's not." That made me laugh. Not a big laugh, just a snort. Loud enough. Rowan looked over at me, eyes all wet and angry. "What are you laughing at?" "I don't know," I said. "You sound like my dad when the truck won't start." That was it. That was the moment. He stopped crying, wiped his face on his sleeve and stared at me like I'd just handed him a secret. We were inseparable after that. Growing up, everyone knew us as a pair. Teachers, neighbors, coaches, didn't matter. Where Rowan went, I went. Where trouble showed up, we weren't far behind. Rowan was the instigator. Always had a grin that said he'd already thought 3 steps ahead. I was quieter, but I followed him anyway. If he jumped a fence, I was already halfway over it. If he talked back, I stood beside him and took the punishment too. By 3rd grade, the teachers had a name for us. The Twin Disasters. I still remember Mrs. Calhoun pulling me aside one afternoon. She smelled like cheap coffee and peppermint. "You're a good kid," she said. "But Rowan, he's going to get you in trouble." I shrugged. "He already does." She sighed like she was tired of fighting gravity. They tried separating us. Different classes, different lunch periods, but it never worked. We found ways. Bathroom breaks, recess, after school. We'd sit on the curb outside his house throwing rocks at street signs and talking about dumb stuff like how cool it'd be to have a jet ski or how we were totally gonna move out west someday. By high school, things changed. Girls happened, jobs happened. Life started pulling us in slightly different directions. We didn't cause trouble anymore, not the obvious kind anyway. But every Friday night, we'd still end up shoulder to shoulder at the football field, yelling at the refs like they could hear us. Rowan always slapped my back and said, "Man, remember when they thought separating us would fix everything?" I'd laugh. Yeah, poor bastards. Graduation came faster than either of us expected. He went to a college a few states away. I went even farther. Different time zones, different lives. But we kept the ritual. Once or twice a month, late-night calls. Him complaining about his roommate smelling like wet laundry and bad decisions. Me talking about classes and the girl I was pretty sure I'd marry someday. When we came home for holidays, we met at the same place every time. A greasy little diner off Route 11. Vinyl booths, cracked menus, coffee that tasted burnt no matter what time of day it was. Rowan called it planning treason. Because if life can hear us, he said once, tapping the table, it'll try to stop us. The night everything ended started like nothing at all. It was Christmas break, unseasonably warm. One of those nights where you don't even need a jacket and it feels wrong for December. I'd just gotten engaged. My fiancé was staying at my parents' place, tired from travel, curled up on the couch with my mom. Rowan had texted me earlier that day. Rowan, party tonight. Old crew, you in? Me. Wouldn't miss it. Rowan, good. We gotta talk treason. I asked my fiancée if she wanted to come. She smiled and shook her head. Go. You two never get time alone anymore. I left around 8:30, threw a case of beer in the back seat and drove across town with the windows down, radio low. I remember thinking how calm everything felt, like the world was holding its breath. The party was already loud when I got there. Music thumping through the walls, laughter spilling into the street. I dropped the beer in the kitchen and found Rowan mid-story, surrounded by people waving his arms like he was directing traffic. And then this dude has the nerve to say, maybe it's your fault, he said. Like, bro, you don't even wash your sheets. People laughed. He spotted me and broke away, pulling me into a hug that nearly knocked the air out of me. There he is, he said, future married man. Still alive, I said. Barely. We grabbed beers and slipped away to the balcony. Someone was already out there smoking, the night air thick with weed and cheap cologne. We leaned against the railing, talking over the noise. You happy? He asked. Yeah, I said. I really am. He nodded. Good. You deserve that. More people filtered out. The balcony filled up faster than I noticed. Someone turned the music up inside. Someone else laughed too loud. The railing creaked when people leaned on it. Rowan frowned. It's getting packed out here. Let's head back in, I said. I went first. I slid the door open, stepped inside, and then everything vanished. Not slowly, not dramatically. Just gone. 20-something people disappeared from my line of sight in less than a second. For a split moment, my brain couldn't process it. It felt like reality skipped a frame. Then I heard the sound. A deep, wet crash, screams cutting off midair. I ran back to the door and looked down, and my world ended. I don't remember screaming, but people told me later that I was. All I remember is my hands gripping the balcony door so hard my knuckles went white. Below me was chaos, bodies twisted at impossible angles, someone crawling, leaving a dark smear behind them, someone else not moving at all. The sidewalk was slick, reflecting the streetlight like it was raining, except it wasn't rain. It was blood. Rowan, I yelled, my voice cracking. Rowan! No answer. People crowded behind me, pushing, asking what happened, but their words sounded muffled like I was underwater. I shoved past them and sprinted down the stairs 2 at a time. The smell hit me first. Metallic. Sharp. Wrong. Someone was crying. Someone else was screaming a name over and over. I stepped over a shoe that didn't have a foot in it anymore. My brain kept trying to make sense of things it wasn't built to understand. Help me, a guy yelled. Please, my girlfriend, she's under there. I dropped to my knees and started pulling bodies aside. Hands slipped. Someone groaned when I moved them. Another didn't react at all. We found the girlfriend fast. She was breathing, barely. Blood on her face that wasn't hers. I helped drag her clear, then turned back. Rowan, I muttered. Come on, man, where are you? I flipped one body, then another, and then I saw his face. His eyes were half open, unfocused. Blood ran from his nose and mouth, soaking into the concrete. For a second, I didn't move. I couldn't. My brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I shook him. Hey, you gotta wake up, all right? This isn't funny." Nothing. Two guys rushed over and helped me lift him. I felt his pulse. Weak, but there. "He's alive," I said, almost laughing. "He's alive." The sirens came fast after that. Red and blue lights painted the street like some sick holiday decoration. I rode in the ambulance with him, holding his hand, talking nonstop. "You remember kindergarten?" I said. "You cried like a baby. You were so loud they could hear you down the hall. You gotta keep making noise, all right? Don't go quiet on me now." He never squeezed back. At the hospital, everything blurred together. Doctors, nurses, phones ringing, people sobbing in corners. One by one, families were pulled into quiet rooms and came out shattered. Just before dawn, a doctor stopped in front of me. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "He had too many injuries." I nodded like I understood, like that sentence meant anything at all. By the end of the week, 6 people were gone. 18 others would never be the same. And the rest of us, friends, parents, strangers who just happened to be there, we carried it anyway. 17 years have passed. Sometimes we still meet up. Sit in silence. Say his name out loud so it doesn't disappear. I tell stories about Rowan, the kid who cried on his first day of school, the troublemaker, the brother I chose. And sometimes, late at night, I imagine him somewhere else, causing problems like he always did, laughing, grinning, waiting. If there's an afterlife, I hope it has a balcony strong enough to hold us both, because I can't think of a better way to spend eternity than talking treason with my best friend. I grew up on Ashford Lane, and for most of my life, nothing ever happened there. That's not nostalgia talking, that's just a fact. Ashford Lane sat tucked behind a stretch of aging strip malls and a long-dead railroad spur no one used anymore. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't dangerous. It was the kind of street people forgot existed once they drove past it. 26 houses, mostly ranch style, mostly owned, not rented. The kind of place where folks waved even if they didn't remember your name. I was born in the beige house with the peeling green shutters at number 411. Same house my parents still live in. Same bedroom I slept in at 5, 15, and 23. From the time I learned to walk until the year I finally started thinking about moving out, I can honestly say I never once saw a police cruiser roll down our street. No sirens, no domestic calls, no drunk fights spilling into the road at midnight. The loudest thing Ashford Lane ever produced was Mr. Haskins firing up his leaf blower at 7 in the morning like he was doing the whole block a favor, so yeah. When I say it was quiet, I mean quiet. That's why the moving truck stood out so damn much. It was late May, already warm enough that the windows stayed cracked all night. I remember because I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, scrolling through my phone, when I heard an engine rev harder than it needed to. Then another. I stepped over to my bedroom window and pulled the curtain aside. A white U-Haul sat crooked in front of number 417. Behind it were 2 motorcycles. Big ones. Chrome everywhere. The kind of bikes that sounded like thunder even when they were just idling. 2 guys leaned against them, laughing loudly, beers already in hand though it wasn't even noon yet. One by one, curtains shifted all up and down the street. Mrs. Calder from 405. Old Ron at 419. Eldon Pike, everyone called him Pike, next door at 413. We all watched. Nobody said a word. New people always drew attention on Ashford Lane, not because we were nosy, because change didn't come here often. When it did, you noticed. I didn't get a bad feeling right away, just cautious. Later that afternoon, I was taking the trash out when the guy from the motorcycles waved me over. "Hey neighbor," he called out. I hesitated for half a second, then walked over. He stuck his hand out. "Name's Coulter Vance, just moved in." His grip was firm, confident, not aggressive. "I'm Ryan," I said. "Nice street you got here," he said. looking around like he was appraising the place. Real peaceful. That's kind of the selling point, I replied. He laughed. Don't worry, man. We're not here to screw it up. Behind him, a woman stepped out of the house. Dark hair pulled back, hoodie despite the heat. She gave a small, tired smile. This is Mara, Coulter said. My wife. She nodded at me. Nice to meet you. Her voice was quiet, careful. At the time, I thought nothing of it. That was mistake number 2. The first party came less than a week later, Thursday night, around 9. At first, it was just music, bass low enough that you felt it more than heard it. I tried to ignore it, put my headphones on, told myself it would wind down. By 10:30, engines started roaring, motorcycles, cars, doors slamming, laughter spilling out into the street. I checked my phone. Neighborhood Facebook group was already lighting up. Anyone else hearing this? Is this going to be a regular thing? Some of us have work in the morning. Nobody replied directly. Nobody ever did. By midnight, beer bottles clinked somewhere near my driveway. I sighed, shut my window, and went to bed. The noise finally stopped around 2. The next morning, I saw Pike out front picking up trash. Broken bottles, crushed cans. Someone had vomited near his mailbox. I walked over without thinking. Morning, I said. He gave a tired smile. Didn't sleep much. Neither did anyone else. We cleaned in silence for a few minutes. They apologized, he finally said. Who? The new folks. Said it got out of hand. You believe them? Pike shrugged. I got kids. I gotta believe something. He didn't sound convinced. The parties kept coming. Every weekend. Sometimes midweek. Louder. Bigger. Motorcycles lined the street. Cars blocked driveways. Strangers wandered into yards like they owned them. One night I heard Pike knock on their door. Hey man, Pike said, voice steady. I've asked before, please, I got 2 girls trying to sleep. Coulter laughed. It's just noise, brother. That was the moment I saw Pike's shoulders sag. He walked away without another word. Pike wasn't a violent man. He worked himself raw. Construction by day, warehouse shifts by night. His wife had walked out years earlier, leaving him with 2 daughters and a pile of bills. He never complained. He just kept going. Every morning, rain or shine, he walked those girls to the bus stop. Every night he checked the doors twice before bed. He deserved peace. By December, everyone knew what was coming. When the motorcycles started arriving at 4 in the afternoon, my stomach sank. This one felt different, bigger, heavier. I saw Pike standing on his porch, hands on his hips, watching the street fill up. He went inside, came back out, knocked on 417's door one last time. Please, I heard him say. Just tonight. Please. Coulter smiled. Relax. It's New Year's. The street was quiet when I woke up. Too quiet. Then, pop, pop, pop. At first I thought fireworks, then screaming. I ran upstairs, and everything ended. The screaming stopped as suddenly as it started. For a half second I wondered if my mind had filled in the worst-case scenario. Maybe it was fireworks. Maybe someone slipped on ice. Maybe. Then I saw her. She staggered out of 417, one hand pressed to her chest, the other dragging along the siding like she needed the house to stay upright. Her sweatshirt was darkened in places that shouldn't have been dark. Blood doesn't look like it does in movies. It's thicker, slower. It soaks instead of splashing. I whispered, "Oh my God," without realizing I'd spoken out loud. She made it maybe 10 feet before collapsing face down on the lawn. I ran to my closet, hands shaking so badly I knocked over a stack of shoes and grabbed the old binoculars my dad used for bird watching. By the time I got back to the window, she was still moving, barely. Then Pike stepped outside. He didn't rush. That's what haunts me. He didn't storm out yelling, didn't look frantic, didn't look angry in the way people expect anger to look. He looked empty. He walked toward her slowly, gun hanging loose at his side. I pressed the binoculars to my face, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Pike," I whispered. "Please don't." She tried to push herself up. He raised the gun. Time stretched thin. 3 shots. Each one sounded heavier than the last, like the air itself was being punched out of the world. He stood there after, just staring down at her, waiting. Maybe hoping she'd move. Maybe making sure she wouldn't. Then, without hesitation, he turned the gun on himself. One final shot. When his body hit the ground, my legs gave out. I dropped the binoculars and scrambled for my phone. 911. What's your emergency? There's been a shooting, I said, barely able to breathe. Ashford Lane, 2 people, I saw. Sir, are you in danger? No, I'm inside. Please hurry. I hung up and stayed by the window, numb as sirens started to rise in the distance. Police cars flooded the street. Ambulances that never left. Red and blue lights bouncing off houses that had never seen them before. I didn't want to talk, but I did. I crossed the street, hands still shaking, and told the detective everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said, "I'm sorry you had to see that. I didn't feel better." Days later, the news broke. Pike had left a letter. They released parts of it. He wrote about exhaustion, about working double shifts, about feeling invisible. He wrote about his daughters and then about the bicycle. A charity worker had made sure Pike's oldest daughter got a bike for Christmas. Brand new, bright red, streamers on the handlebars. According to the letter, she rode it every day, even in the cold, even in the snow. It was the happiest he'd seen her since her mother left. On New Year's morning, Pike walked outside to assess the damage. At the end of his driveway were tire tracks, deep ones, and lying twisted at the end of them, the bike, bent frame, snapped wheel, useless. A neighbor later told police Pike collapsed when he saw it, sobbed, then stood up, wiped his face, and went back inside. Pike's daughters went to live with their aunt. The house at 417 sold twice. Nobody stays long. Ashford Lane is quiet again, but it's not the same. Sometimes at night, I hear engines that aren't there, laughter that doesn't exist anymore, and I think about silence. How easy it is. How dangerous. If someone new ever moves in and thinks they can run roughshod over a neighborhood like this, I'll tell them this story, because peace isn't automatic, and sometimes silence kills. I used to think my life was boring in a good way. I worked weekdays at a regional insurance office off Route 9, rented a second-floor apartment above a closed dentist's office, and spent most nights cooking boxed pasta while something dumb played on TV. I wasn't chasing anything big. I liked predictable. Predictable meant safe. That's probably why I still replay that night over and over, because it started so normal it almost hurts to remember. I'd grown up not far from where this happened, a stretch of suburban sprawl outside a mid-sized East Coast city, where every neighborhood looked like it had been copied and pasted. Vinyl siding, cracked driveways, mailbox flags bent sideways. You could get lost here without ever really leaving home. I met Lena 2 years before that night, at a discount grocery store of all places. I was standing in the cereal aisle debating whether name-brand flakes were worth the extra $1 when she reached across me without saying "excuse me" and grabbed the last box. She looked at me like she'd just realized I existed and said, "Sorry. Survival of the fittest." I laughed. She smiled like she already knew she'd won. That was Lena. Dry humor. Quiet confidence. She hated being the center of attention, but somehow always was. She worked front desk at a physical therapy clinic, hated her boss, loved thunderstorms, and always smelled faintly like laundry soap and mint gum. She also hated parties, which is why that Thursday night already felt off. A guy from my office, someone I barely knew, had invited a bunch of people to a house party out in Hollis Glen, one of those developments built in the early 2000s and already aging poorly. The invite came through a group chat titled "Low-Key Drinks," which should have been my first red flag. I almost said no. Lena noticed me staring at my phone and asked, "What's up?" I told her. She hesitated, chewing her lip, then said, "I'll go. I don't want you going alone and pretending you're having fun." That should have been my second red flag. We drove out around 10. The neighborhood was quiet in that deadway suburbs get after dark, streetlights humming, sprinklers clicking somewhere, no actual life visible. The house was bigger than I expected. 2 stories, white siding, attached garage. One of those fake stone accents around the entryway. Music thumped softly inside. Not club loud, just enough bass to feel it in your chest. Lena squeezed my hand before we went in. "If it gets weird, we leave." "Deal?" "Deal," I said. Inside, the house smelled like cheap beer, pizza grease, and something underneath it all damp. Like a basement that never fully dried out. Lena wrinkled her nose. "Smells like wet dog." I shrugged. "Probably the carpets." People nodded at us as we came in. No one I really knew. A lot of half-introductions that didn't stick. We ended up on the living room couch, red plastic cups in hand, watching people drift in and out of conversations. Lena stayed close. Knee pressed against mine, her fingers hooked through my belt loop like she was anchoring herself. Around 11:30, someone I never figured out who shouted, "Yo, let's play hide and seek." There was laughter. Someone said, "We're not 12. Someone else said, "That's why it's funny." Before I could process it, the lights went out. Pitch black. Someone whooped. Footsteps scrambled. Furniture creaked. Lena squeezed my hand once, hard, then slipped away. "Don't cheat," she whispered, and smiled. That was the last normal moment of my life. I counted with the rest. Loud voices echoing numbers. Someone bumped into me and muttered, "My bad, bro." The house felt different in the dark. Bigger somehow. Hallways stretched. Corners felt wrong. When the count ended, I started calling for Lena quietly. Nothing. I moved through the hall, hands out, bumping walls. Laughter floated from somewhere upstairs. A door slammed. Someone whispered and giggled. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Lights snapped back on. People groaned, blinking. A guy emerged from behind the shower curtain to sarcastic applause. Someone complained about hiding under a bed. Lena didn't come back. I waited another minute, then another. I checked upstairs. Empty rooms, open closets, a half-finished puzzle on a bedroom floor. I texted her. No reply. Her phone battery had been low earlier, so I told myself not to panic. But my chest felt tight anyway. I started asking around. "Hey, have you seen Lena? Blue jacket, shoulder-length hair." Blank looks. One guy said, "Who?" A girl laughed awkwardly. "Sorry, I don't know everyone here. I found the host, Trevor, near the kitchen island." "Hey," I said. "My girlfriend. Lena. Did she leave?" He frowned. "You came solo, man." I laughed. Too loudly. "No, I didn't." He shrugged. "I don't know what to tell you." I pulled out my phone, went to my photos. Every picture of her was gone. Not deleted, just never there. My throat closed. Her coat was still by the door, her keys inside. Chapstick. A folded note with a heart drawn in the corner. Outside, people smoked under a flickering patio light. No Lena. Upstairs again. Crawl space. Nothing. When I called her number, a robotic voice told me the line was unavailable. By the time Trevor asked me to leave, I was shaking. I drove to her apartment. A stranger answered the door. The landlord had no record of her. Neither did anyone else. Weeks passed. Then months. I wrote everything down so I wouldn't forget her. And then one night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I'm still here. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Sometimes I drive past Hollis Glen. The house is for sale now. Empty. Windows dark. I never go inside. I don't think it would remember me. I remember exactly how tired I was that Thursday. The kind of tired that settles into your bones and makes even small decisions feel heavier than they should. I'd been working late for weeks, covering shifts that weren't mine, staying quiet in meetings where everyone else seemed to know how to speak without actually saying anything. That was my life back then, head down, paycheck in, Go home, repeat. I wasn't lonely exactly, just detached. Comfortable with distance, comfortable with routine. So when Lorna leaned against the edge of my cubicle that afternoon, tapping her fingernail against the cheap laminate, I already knew I should say no before she even opened her mouth. "You ever do anything fun?" she asked, half smiling, half daring me. "Depends what you mean by fun," I said, not looking up from my screen. She laughed softly, not loud, not forced. It was the same laugh that had been catching my attention for months now, low, real, like she didn't hand it out to everyone. "We're having a thing tonight. After midnight, couple people from work, couple friends. You should come." I finally looked at her. She wasn't dressed differently, wasn't acting flirtier than usual, but something about the way she said thing made it sound intentional, like she'd rehearsed it. "Tonight?" I said. "It's Thursday." "So?" She shrugged. "Fridays are overrated." I hesitated. I always did. She must have noticed, because she leaned closer and lowered her voice. "It won't be like the usual work crap," she said. "Promise?" I didn't ask what she meant. That was my first mistake. I didn't grow up going to parties. I grew up in a narrow ranch house in a nowhere town outside Hollis Ridge, the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do. My dad worked nights at a distribution center. My mom cleaned offices downtown. Weekends were for grocery runs and folding laundry, not staying out past midnight. Even in college, I'd been the guy who left early, who made excuses about early mornings that didn't exist. So by the time midnight rolled around and I was driving my dented sedan past the edge of town, phone glowing with a pin Lorna had sent, I already felt like I was trespassing in someone else's life. The house sat alone near a half-finished development that had gone bankrupt years ago. No streetlights, just skeletal frames of homes that never became anything, their outlines dark against the sky. The house itself was an old colonial, paint peeling, porch sagging just slightly enough to notice if you were paying attention. No music, no voices, no cars out front. I checked the address again. Same place. I texted her, "I'm here." A second later, doors open. We're inside. That should have been my second mistake. The door creaked when I pushed it open, the sound sharp in the quiet. Inside, the air felt stale, like the house had been sealed up for years and only recently remembered how to breathe. A few strings of warm white lights hung unevenly across the ceiling, plugged into extension cords that snaked along the walls. Candles sat on random surfaces, windowsills, old end tables. Even the floor flickering just enough to throw shadows where shadows didn't belong. There were maybe 15 people inside. Too many to feel intimate. Too few to feel safe. Conversations stopped when I stepped in. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just paused, like everyone had been waiting for a cue that hadn't arrived yet. Then Lorna caught my eye from across the room. She smiled. Not the smile she wore at work. This one didn't reach her eyes. I nodded at her, unsure what else to do. She didn't wave me over. Someone brushed past me and muttered, "Drinks are there," pointing at an old door laid across two plastic storage bins. Bottles I didn't recognize sat half empty, their labels peeled or missing entirely. I poured myself something amber and thick, the smell sharp enough to make my eyes water. Took a small sip, regretted it immediately. The music was barely there, some kind of low, droning sound that came and went, like the house itself was humming. Every time I moved closer to a conversation, it died. People smiled politely, nodded, then drifted away. It wasn't rude, it was deliberate. That's when I noticed the stairs. No one said they were off limits. No sign, no rope. But every time someone wandered too close, someone else shifted, stepping into the space casually, blocking the view like it was instinct. I laughed to myself, nerves creeping in. You're reading into it, I thought. It's just a weird party. Then I heard chanting. Not loud, not theatrical, soft and steady, coming from somewhere upstairs. I froze, drink halfway to my mouth. The sound rose and fell in a pattern that didn't match the music, too measured, too intentional. I took a step toward the hallway. A hand closed around my wrist. "Don't," Lorna said quietly. I turned to her. Up close, her face looked tighter, like she was holding something in. What's up there? I asked, trying to keep it light. Her jaw flexed. Just don't. That was all she said before letting go and walking away. The house felt colder near the stairs. Not temperature cold, pressure cold, like standing too close to something alive. I lingered longer than I should have. Long enough to hear footsteps above me. Long enough to see someone I didn't recognize slip up the stairs and disappear without a word. Long enough to realize that not everyone who went upstairs came back down. A man passed me in the hall, tall, lean, wearing a dark sweater that looked too formal for the setting. He held a glass of something darker than mine. As he walked by, he met my eyes and nodded once. Not a greeting. An acknowledgement. Like he knew exactly what I was thinking. That's when I decided to leave. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, heart pounding harder with every step. I could already feel the relief of cold air, the normalcy of my car, the safety of distance. The door handle was cold under my palm. "You saw more than you should have," Lorna said behind me. I turned slowly. She stood too close. Close enough that I could smell that same metallic sweet scent I'd noticed near the stairs. "I didn't see anything," I said. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "Good," she said. "Then go home." I didn't argue. I stepped outside and didn't look back. Lorna never came back to work. HR said she'd taken personal leave. Then they said she'd resigned. No goodbye email. No explanation. I tried to forget the house. The chanting. The way people looked at me like I was already marked. I almost succeeded. Almost. 3 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. It was me, standing in that hallway, hand on the doorknob. Taken from behind. I deleted it, turned off my phone. Sat in the dark for a long time listening to my own breathing. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. Some invitations aren't mistakes. And some parties aren't about who shows up. They're about who leaves. I never planned on throwing a party in that house. Honestly, I wasn't even the kind of person who liked having people over. I'm the guy who keeps his place quiet, keeps to himself, pays rent on time, and stays out of trouble. But sometimes life nudges you into decisions you don't fully think through, especially when money's tight and you're trying to convince yourself you're finally getting ahead. I'd just turned 26 when I moved into the place. Fresh breakup. New job that paid decent but not great. Credit still recovering. I needed something cheap, fast, and big enough that I didn't feel like I was living inside a shoebox anymore. That's how I found the house on Redwood Lane. The listing almost felt fake. 2 floors, detached garage. Backyard big enough for a fire pit and a couple busted lawn chairs. Rent that was hundreds lower than anything else in the area. No application fee. No long wait. I remember sitting in my car, phone in my hand, rereading the listing twice and muttering, "Yeah, there's gotta be a catch." Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. But when I called, the landlord didn't sound shady. Older guy, calm voice, almost bored. He asked maybe 3 questions total before saying, "If you've got first and last, you can move in this weekend." That should have been my first red flag. I moved in with Kellen and Rourke, 2 guys I'd known since community college. Not best friends, but solid, the kind you trust to pay rent and not steal your stuff. Kellen worked construction. Rourke did remote IT work and barely left his room. The first week felt off, but in a way I couldn't explain. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Sound didn't travel right. You could clap your hands in the living room and it felt like the noise just died halfway up the walls. At night, the upstairs hallway light flickered even though the wiring had supposedly been redone. Neighbors watched us. Not aggressively. Just lingering looks. Curtains moving. Porch lights clicking on when we pulled into the driveway. One evening, while I was taking the trash out, an older woman across the street called out to me. "Hey," she said, wrapped in a sweater even though it wasn't that cold. "You boys settling in okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, ma'am." "So far, so good." She hesitated, then added, "Just do yourselves a favor and keep it down at night, especially out back." "Sure," I said, thinking she meant noise complaints. She stared at the house behind me, not at my face. Music carries weird here. That stuck with me. A couple days later, Kellen floated the idea of a housewarming party. Nothing crazy, he said, beer in hand. Just people we know. Break the place in. Rourke shrugged. I don't care. I'll probably be upstairs anyway. I should have said no. Instead, I said, yeah, all right. One night, Friday rolled around faster than I expected. By 10 p.m., the house was full. Not packed wall to wall, but loud enough. Music thumping, drinks spilling, laughter echoing weirdly, like the house didn't know what to do with it. People crowded the living room, the kitchen, spilled out onto the back porch. I tried to relax, told myself I was being paranoid. Around 11, someone asked if we had more cups. I remembered a storage closet upstairs near the guest room and volunteered to grab them. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step louder than it should have been. At the top, the hallway felt colder. Not drafty cold, like stepping into a basement. The overhead light flickered once, twice, then steadied. That's when I saw someone standing at the far end. They were facing the wall, just standing there. Hey, I called out, annoyed more than scared. Bathroom's the other way. No response. I took a step forward. Blink. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No door closing. Nothing. My stomach tightened. I stood there longer than I should have, listening. All I could hear was the music downstairs, muffled like it was playing underwater. I grabbed the cups and went back down, trying to laugh it off. Anyone go upstairs just now? I asked casually. Kellen shook his head. Nah, man. Why? Thought I saw someone. Rourke smirked. House already messing with you? I forced a smile, but the feeling didn't leave. The air near the stairwell felt wrong. Heavy. A couple guests kept glancing toward it, like they expected something to come down. Then we heard it. A dragging sound. Slow, deliberate. Like something heavy being pulled across wood. The second I stepped onto the first stair, the sound stopped. Dead silent. I checked the upstairs rooms. All empty, except the guest room. The window was wide open. I know it had been closed. I walked over to shut it and froze. Across the yard, the older woman stood outside again. Same robe, same blank stare. Watching the house. Not waving, not blinking. Just watching. I shut the window hard and backed away. When I turned, I heard whispering. Not words. More like breath, pushing through a throat that hadn't spoken in a long time. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Then the scream came from the backyard. A girl stood shaking, pointing toward the tree line. There was someone there, she said. They weren't moving. I saw it too. A shape between the trees. Tall. Wrong. 1 second it was there. The next, gone. People left fast after that. Doors locked. Lights flickered. Something slammed upstairs. We went up together. The guest room window was open again. The curtain snagged on a strip of old, rotting cloth. The next morning, the woman came over. That house listens, she said. Noise wakes it up. We moved out 2 days later. The house still shows up in my dreams. So does the hallway. And the feeling of being watched. I thought leaving would fix it. That's what everyone tells you, right? You get out. Put distance between yourself and the thing that scared you. And eventually your body forgets how to stay braced for impact. But fear doesn't always work like that. The last night we spent in the house on Redwood Lane, none of us unpacked a single box. Everything stayed stacked near the front door like we were already halfway gone. We didn't say it out loud, but the unspoken agreement was clear. If something happened again, we were leaving immediately. No debate. Kellen slept on the couch with his boots on. Rourke dragged his mattress downstairs and wedged it against the wall near the TV. I took the armchair, sitting upright, phone charging in my lap like I might need it fast. Every sound felt amplified. The refrigerator cycling, the tick of the wall clock, the faint hum of the streetlight outside. Every time the house settled, my shoulders tensed like I was waiting for footsteps. Around 2:13 a.m., the lights flickered. Not a power surge, not a full blackout. Just a brief dimming, like the house exhaled. Rourke noticed it too. "Did you see that?" he whispered. Kellen sat up. "Yeah." No one laughed. Then came the sound. Tap. Not upstairs. Not outside. From the hallway behind us. Tap. Tap. Slow. Patient. Fingertips against drywall. I stood up. Heart pounding. "You guys hear that, right? Tap. Tap." Rourke swallowed. "That's not pipes." The tapping moved. Not closer sideways. Like something tracing the wall. Feeling for weak spots. I remembered the way sound died in this house. How it never echoed right. It didn't want us to hear it clearly. Kellen whispered, "I'm done. I'm not doing this." That's when the hallway light turned on by itself. The switch didn't flip. The bulb just glowed. At the far end of the hallway, the shadow appeared again. Not fully formed. More like a darker absence inside the dark. Tall. Too still. Facing us this time. I couldn't make out a face, but I knew it was looking back. I didn't think. I moved. I grabbed my keys, shoved my phone in my pocket, and said, "Now. We're leaving now." None of us argued. The front door stuck for half a second, just long enough to make my chest tighten, then opened. Cold air rushed in. As we stepped onto the porch, I heard it clearly for the first time. A voice. Not loud. Not angry. Curious. It sounded like it was trying to remember how to talk. "Stay." I slammed the door. We slept in Kellen's truck that night, parked under a gas station light like scared kids. None of us closed our eyes for more than a few minutes at a time. The next morning, we went back with daylight and boxes. The house looked normal. Too normal. No flickering lights. No cold air. No sound. Just dust motes floating in sunlight and that same deadened quiet. While packing, I noticed something on the wall in the hallway. Marks. Not scratches, finger smears. Darkened spots where the paint looked rubbed thin, like someone had been standing there for a long time, pressing their hands against the wall. Downstairs, Rourke found something worse. A panel behind the guest room closet door, loose, hidden. Inside was old insulation, and a small bundle of fabric. The same fabric from the window, wrapped around something solid. Kellen didn't want to open it. I did anyway. It was a child's shoe. Worn, thin, mud-stained, decades old. That's when it clicked. The neighbors weren't afraid of the house. They were afraid of what it remembered. We finished packing in silence. As we loaded the last box, the older woman stood across the street again. She didn't cross over this time. She just said, "It didn't like being ignored." I asked her, "What happened here?" She hesitated, then quietly said, "A party, years ago. Noise. Too many people. Someone went missing, and the house kept the rest. We drove away without looking back. I don't live near Redwood Lane anymore, but sometimes, late at night, when there's music playing somewhere down the block, when laughter carries too far, I swear I hear tapping. Slow, patient, like something waiting to be invited again." I still remember the sound of the heater rattling in my parents' house the night everything finally felt quiet again. It's funny what sticks with you after years go by, not the big stuff people expect, but little things like that, low, metallic ticking, or the smell of stale beer on a winter jacket. I'm starting here because that's where the story really begins for me. Not at the party, not on the balcony, but years earlier, long before I knew how fast a life could disappear. I don't remember much from being 5 years old. Most of my childhood is blurred together like an overexposed photograph. But I remember him. Clear as day. I remember standing in the kindergarten hallway. My sneakers too big. My backpack sliding off one shoulder. Parents were everywhere, crouched down, hugging their kids like they were sending them off to war. Some kids were crying. One kid was sobbing. That was him. His face was red, nose running, mouth wide open in a way that made you think the sound coming out of him might crack the walls. A teacher knelt in front of him saying, "It's okay, buddy. Your mom will be back before you know it." He didn't believe her. I stood there watching him, not scared, not crying, just curious. I walked over without thinking and said, "You want to see my dinosaur?" He stopped crying like someone hit a switch, sniffed, looked at me. "Is it a T-Rex?" "Nah," I said, digging into my backpack. "It's got spikes. Spikes are cooler." He considered that very seriously, then nodded. "Okay." That was it. That was how it started. His name was Caleb Rourke. Mine's I. And for the next 15 years, that name might as well have been stitched right next to mine. We were inseparable through grade school. Caleb was loud, fearless, and always pushing things just a little too far. I wasn't innocent, I just didn't have his imagination. If there was trouble, he found it. If there was trouble, I followed. Teachers called us those two again. One time in second grade, Caleb convinced me it'd be funny to replace the class hamster's wheel with a Lego contraption he built at home. The hamster got launched across the cage like a missile. No one got hurt, but the scream Mrs. Holloway let out still echoes in my head. In the principal's office, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You're a good kid, I. Why do you keep getting dragged into this?" Caleb whispered, "Because he loves me." And I laughed so hard I cried. They tried separating us after that, different classes, different seating charts. Didn't matter. We found each other at recess, at lunch, on the walk home. Kids started calling us the twins, even though we looked nothing alike. By middle school, the trouble faded into dumb jokes and sarcasm. By high school, it disappeared almost completely. Girls showed up. Life got bigger. We didn't hang out every day anymore, but every Friday night, we met at the football field, sat on the cold metal bleachers, shared fries, talked trash about everyone we knew. "You ever think we're gonna end up boring?" he asked me once, staring out at the field. "Nah," I said. "You? Maybe." He grinned. "Yeah, probably." College split us in half. He went west. I went east. Time zones became a thing. Phone calls turned into once a month rituals, him telling me about his awful roommates, me complaining about exams and money. When we came home for holidays, we met at the same all-night diner just off Route 9. Same cracked vinyl booths. Same waitress who called everyone hun. We'd sit there at 2 a.m., coffee going cold, talking about everything and nothing. "Man," he said once, tapping his mug, "when we're old, we're gonna laugh about how stupid we were." "If we make it that long," I said. He snorted. "Relax. We're indestructible." My last year of college, I brought my fiancée home for Christmas. I wanted Caleb to meet her. Wanted him to see that part of my life. He texted me the night before we arrived. "Caleb, party at Ross's place tomorrow. You in?" Me. Wouldn't miss it. Caleb. "We'll talk treason." That was our joke. Anything serious, anything deep, we called it treason. The night of the party, I tried to convince my fiancée to come with me. "You sure?" she asked. "Sounds rowdy." "It's just old friends," I said. "I won't be late." She smiled. "Go. You need that time." I left around 8:30, cold air biting through my jacket. Music was already thumping when I pulled up to the apartment complex. Red cups everywhere. Laughter spilling out onto the sidewalk. Inside, it was chaos in the way only hometown parties are. Too many people, too much nostalgia, not enough space. Caleb spotted me immediately. "There he is," he yelled, wrapping me in a hug that nearly knocked the beer out of my hand. "Dude, you look old. You look unemployed." Fair. He launched into a story about his roommate, something involving spoiled milk and a missing sock, and when he finally ran out of breath, he slapped my shoulder. "Balcony," he said. "We need air." The balcony wasn't big, a narrow slab of concrete with a rusted railing. But it was warm for December, unusually warm, and people kept drifting out there to smoke, to laugh, to escape the noise inside. Hours passed without us noticing. At some point, the laughter got louder. Too many people. Someone knocked over a bottle. "Let's head back in," I said. I went first, sliding the door shut behind me. That's when everything dropped. No warning, no sound like you'd expect. Just a sudden absence like gravity forgot what it was doing. I turned back around, confused. The balcony was gone. Where there should have been people, there was open air. then screaming. I ran to the railing and looked down. Bodies. Broken, tangled, bleeding. Someone was crying. Someone wasn't moving. "Caleb," I yelled. "Caleb." No answer. People crowded behind me, gasping, swearing, hands over mouths. I don't remember running downstairs, but suddenly I was there, knees slipping on concrete slick with blood. Someone grabbed my arm. "Don't move them. I'm finding my friend." We pulled people aside, one by one. Groans, whimpers, silence. Then I saw his face, bloodied, still. "Hey," I whispered, shaking him. "Hey man, don't do this." His pulse was there, weak, but there. Paramedics came. Sirens tore through the night. I rode in the ambulance, holding his hand, telling him dumb stories like he could hear me. At the hospital, hours blurred together. Families cried. Doctors spoke in careful voices. Just before dawn, a nurse pulled me aside. "I'm so sorry." He was gone. 6 people died that night. 18 lived with scars they'll never shake. 17 years have passed. Sometimes we meet, we talk, we remember. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I imagine him somewhere else laughing, causing trouble, waiting. I hope I get to sit next to him again someday. I can't think of a better eternity. I remember the smell of that neighborhood before I remember anything else. I remember hot asphalt, stale weed drifting out of cracked windows, cheap cologne mixing with fryer grease from the corner spot that sold chicken until 2 in the morning. I remember sirens so common they blended into the background like insects. I remember learning early not to look too long at anyone, not to flinch, not to run. In the place I grew up, fear wasn't something you showed. Fear was something you swallowed. I was a skinny kid back then, pale, quiet, always aware of how much space I took up, which was never enough. The block didn't care that I kept my head down, or that I tried to stay out of trouble. Being different was enough. Being weak was enough. By the time I was 13, I knew how it felt to be shoved into lockers, to have my shoes stolen, to hear laughter behind me every time I walked home. I knew the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears when a group of older guys decided they were bored. I learned how to apologize even when I hadn't done anything wrong. I learned how to disappear. Then, just after my 15th birthday, something changed. It wasn't overnight. It was small at first, a little more food, a little more lifting in my buddy's garage. Protein powder I bought with money from hauling scrap metal. My shoulders widened. My arms filled out. My face hardened in ways I didn't recognize when I looked in the mirror. People started looking at me differently. At first, it felt good. For the first time in my life, people moved when I walked past. Guys who used to shove me suddenly laughed nervously, clapped me on the back, called me bro. The fear that once owned me, I could see it now. In their eyes, in the way their voices cracked, and I let it go straight to my head. I wish I could tell you I resisted it. I didn't. I leaned into it hard. I became exactly what I used to hate. Fighting stopped being something I feared and turned into something I used. If I thought a guy was scared of me even a little, I pushed him until he broke. I wanted them to swing first, so I could justify what came next. Looking back, I wasn't strong. I was just angry. And power, even fake power, is intoxicating when you've been powerless your whole life. By 19, my reputation walked into rooms before I did. People knew my name, knew not to test me, knew not to spill my drink, not to look too long at my girl, not to laugh too loud around me. That's who I was when the night everything changed finally found me. It was late fall, one of those nights where the air bites just enough to keep you awake. There'd been a high school football game earlier, homecoming weekend, and half the town was drunk by sunset. Parties were everywhere, basements, fields, hotel rooms off the highway. Me and a couple guys I rolled with, Cal Rooker and Jace Nolan, started the night at a cheap hotel near the strip mall. Some friends had rented the room instead of going to the dance. Music was blasting through blown speakers, the floor sticky with beer and soda. Someone had already thrown up in the sink by the time we got there. We stayed until about 11:30, just long enough to get buzzed, laugh too loud, feel invincible. Then someone said, Yo, there's a way bigger party out by Ridgewood. Big house, keg, no cops. That was all it took. The place belonged to my girlfriend's cousin. Huge house sitting on the edge of town where the streetlights thinned out and the trees started crowding the road. I don't know where the parents were that night, and honestly, nobody cared. When we pulled up, cars were already lined along the road. Music thumped so hard I could feel it in my chest before I even stepped out. The front yard was packed, people laughing, shouting, red cups everywhere. Some dude on the porch was charging $5 for solo cups and all you can drink. I remember thinking how stupid that was and handing him the money anyway. We grabbed beers and ended up sitting on the tailgate of someone's truck near the edge of the yard. I was halfway through my second drink when it happened. This tall guy I didn't recognize walked past and bumped into Cal. Beer sloshed down Cal's jacket. "What the hell, man?" Cal snapped, jumping up. The guy held his hands out. "My bad, bro. Didn't mean." I didn't even let him finish. I was on my feet, shoving him hard enough that he lost balance and hit the ground. He looked up at me, eyes wide, fear flashing across his face like a signal flare, and something ugly woke up inside me. I started calling him things I shouldn't repeat, stuff meant to cut deep, stuff I knew would hurt. I wanted him to swing. I wanted the excuse. Instead, he scrambled up and said, "Whatever, man. I'm gonna get my boys." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Yeah," I said. "Go get 'em." There was nothing about him I took seriously. I'd been around real hard dudes. This guy wasn't one of them. I turned my back on him like he didn't exist anymore. Within minutes, he was forgotten. Time blurred the way it does when you're drinking too fast. Music, laughter, random conversations with people I barely knew. My buzz turned heavy, warm, confident. About an hour later, I was mid-sentence talking to some guys near the side of the house when the world exploded behind my eyes. A fist came out of nowhere and slammed into the back of my head. I stumbled but stayed upright. Adrenaline hit instantly. Rage flooded in so fast it scared me. I turned, already clenching my fists. Another punch caught me from the side. This one dropped me to my knees. I remember thinking, I'll kill whoever's in front of me. I was about to stand when something cold and solid pressed against my forehead. Metal. I froze. I didn't need to see it to know what it was, but I did anyway. A dark pistol, close enough that I could see scratches along the slide. I followed the arm holding it up to a face twisted with anger. It was him, the guy from earlier. Beside him stood a handful of other men. Not boys. Men. Hard eyes. No hesitation. No fear. The kind of people who didn't posture because they didn't need to. The music had stopped. The party had gone dead silent. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. My entire world narrowed to that gun. For a long moment, nobody said anything. Then he chuckled. A soft, ugly sound. He started calling me the same things I'd called him earlier. Slow, deliberate, like he was savoring it. My mind screamed at me not to say anything stupid. I nodded when he talked. I swallowed every insult. He asked me a question. I don't even remember what it was. I didn't answer fast enough. He pulled back the hammer with his thumb. The click was louder than anything I'd ever heard. I am, I yelled, panic ripping out of me. I'm whatever you said, man. The yard erupted in laughter. His friends doubled over, slapping each other, pointing at me. The humiliation burned worse than the fear. I felt small, smaller than I'd ever felt as a kid. He lowered the gun, disengaged the hammer like it was nothing, and shook his head. "Man," he said, "you ain't worth it." They turned and walked away, still laughing. I collapsed. I don't know how long I stayed there, staring at the ground, afraid to move. When I finally looked up, the yard was empty around me, like I'd been erased. I didn't ask for a ride. I didn't talk to anyone. I walked 5 miles home in the cold, every step echoing with shame. No one called me the next day. Not one friend checked in. That told me everything. I disappeared for 9 months. Moved to another city. Tried to bury the person I'd been. 7 years later, I ran into someone from my childhood who'd almost gone the same way I had. Together, we built something better. We work with kids who remind me of myself every day. Every scared look, every angry outburst. I see it, and I remember that night. I remember being on my knees, helpless, staring down the end of a gun. If you're reading this and you're on that road, hear me when I say this, it's not too late. Ask for help. Turn around. Don't wait until fear teaches you the lesson. Shame couldn't. I never want another kid to learn it the way I did. I still remember the smell of that apartment more clearly than I remember my graduation day. Old carpet, stale beer, microwave burritos burned just enough to smell like regret. The place sat above a pawn shop on Holloway Street, a block most people pretended didn't exist. Sirens passed through at night like background noise, and the street light outside our window flickered like it was on its last breath. That was home. I was 23 and already tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. People talk about losing direction like it's dramatic, like one bad decision sends you spiraling. For me, it was quieter, slower. I stopped planning, stopped caring, stopped imagining myself anywhere else. I had a degree hanging on the wall that I never looked at and a future I avoided thinking about. My roommate, Lennox Hale, didn't mind any of that. Lennox and I met freshman year at Northbridge College, randomly paired in a dorm room barely big enough for 2 twin beds and 1 busted fan. She had purple streaks in her hair back then, and a laugh that carried down hallways. I was shy, awkward, trying too hard to fit in. Somehow, we worked. By senior year, we were inseparable. When I moved off campus after graduation, Lennox came with me without even asking about the rent. "You breathe, I drink," she'd said. "Seems fair." Lennox had a reputation. Not the messy kind, not the sloppy kind, the legend kind. Guys would hear about her and think it was bullshit. "No way she keeps up," they'd say. "She's like 100 pounds soaking wet." She loved that part. Every weekend, without fail, someone tried to outdrink her. And every weekend, someone failed. I watched men twice her size fold over kitchen sinks, puke in bushes, or pass out on couches while Lennox stood tall, glass still in hand. I admired her confidence. I feared what it cost her. Back then, I didn't have the emotional vocabulary to name it. I just knew something felt off. Friday nights always started the same. Music on low while the sun dipped behind the buildings. Lennox sitting on the counter, swinging her legs, twisting the cap off a bottle she definitely shouldn't have been opening before dinner. "You ready?" she'd ask. For what? For forgetting this whole damn week. She worked nights at a bar called Blue Lantern. The kind of place where the floor stuck to your shoes and the bartender remembered your worst nights better than you did. I jumped between temp jobs, warehouse shifts, overnight stocking, anything that paid fast and didn't ask questions. We lived for weekends because weekdays felt pointless. That night, the night everything cracked, started ordinary. A guy I worked with, Bryce, invited me to his birthday party. He rented a house out past the freeway, near old farmland that never got developed. No neighbors close enough to complain. No street lights. Perfect place to make bad decisions. Lennox was already dressed when I told her. Black jeans, faded band tee, boots scuffed at the toes. "Party?" she asked. "Yeah. Out by County Road 11. She smirked. "Sounds dangerous. I'm in." The house was already alive when we arrived. Bass shaking the walls. Cars lined along the dirt road. Someone had a fire pit going out back, sparks floating into the dark. Inside, the air was thick beer, sweat, cheap cologne. Lennox slipped into it like she belonged there. Within minutes, she had a red cup in her hand. Then another. Then a shot someone handed her without asking. I tried to keep pace, but I never could. Around midnight, a guy named Tucker, broad shoulders, baseball cap backwards, ego loud enough to fill the room, noticed her. "I hear you're the legend," he said, leaning too close. Lennox raised an eyebrow. "You hear right?" He laughed. "Aight. Let's see." They started slow. Beer. Then shots. People gathered around, chanting. Phones out, turning it into a show. I watched her face instead of the cups. At first, she looked normal, relaxed, smiling. Then something changed. Her smile faded. Her skin lost its color. Sweat broke out along her hairline even though the room wasn't hot. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She shot me a look. "Don't start. I said I'm fine." Another shot. Another cheer. 10 minutes later, she leaned against the counter, hand pressed to her stomach. This wasn't drunk. I knew drunk. This was something else. I leaned in again. "Lennox, let's go, please." She opened her mouth to snap back and collapsed. Not a stumble. Not a sway. She just dropped. The room went silent for half a second. Then nervous laughter bubbled up. "She good?" someone asked. "No," I said, already kneeling. "She's not." I shook her shoulders. Hey, wake up." Nothing. Her skin felt clammy, her breathing shallow. Fear hit me like ice water. "Help me," I said. "Please." 2 guys lifted her, carried her to my car. I drove like my foot was on fire, ignoring speed limits, praying every light would turn green. At the hospital, they took her from me immediately. I sat alone in the waiting room, hands shaking, staring at a vending machine that hummed too loud. Time stretched. Around 1 in the morning, a doctor sat across from me. "We're stabilizing her," he said carefully, "but there's severe liver damage." I blinked. "She's 24. He nodded. Sometimes age doesn't matter. When I finally saw her, Lennox tried to joke. "Guess I lost," she said weakly. I swallowed hard. "You almost died." She shrugged. "I'll be fine." She wasn't. And deep down, I knew it. I stayed in that hospital chair until my legs went numb. Machines beeped softly behind the curtain where Lennox Hale lay, her chest rising and falling in a rhythm that felt borrowed. Every time it slowed, my stomach tightened. When she finally woke up, she looked smaller. Not physically, something deeper. Like the version of her that used to fill rooms had stepped outside for air and never come back. She squinted at me. "Why, you look like somebody died." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You scared the hell out of me." She rolled her eyes, dry as sandpaper. "Relax. I've been worse." The doctor came back later that morning. Middle-aged guy, tired eyes, voice steady in a way that made everything he said sound heavier. "You have advanced cirrhosis," he told her. "Your liver is failing." Lennox laughed once, a short, sharp sound. "Wrong chart, man." He didn't laugh back. "Another episode like last night could kill you," he said. "You need to stop drinking. Completely." She nodded like she was agreeing with directions she didn't plan to follow. When we left the hospital, the sun was too bright. Lennox shielded her eyes. "Let's get breakfast," she said. "I'm starving." I stopped walking. "Did you hear anything he just said?" She sighed. "I heard I gotta take it easy." "That's not..." I said I heard him. For a while, she tried. Or pretended to. No liquor in the apartment, beer only. Then, just wine. Then, only weekends. The lines kept moving. Meanwhile, something inside me cracked. Watching her was like watching myself in fast forward. Same habits, same excuses, same empty laughs. One night, after she stumbled in from Blue Lantern, I said it out loud. "I can't do this anymore." She froze in the doorway. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I'm changing," I said. "I have to." She scoffed. "So you're better than me now?" "No. I'm scared." She laughed bitterly. "Then don't watch." And I didn't. I moved out 3 weeks later. We talked less. Then barely at all. 2 years passed. I heard about her through people. She quit the bar, started again, stopped, started, same cycle. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this..." A woman paused. "Are you Lennox's emergency contact?" The funeral home smelled like flowers and disinfectant. Lennox lay still in her casket, makeup covering what alcohol had stolen from her long before death did. 26 years old. I whispered. I tried. I don't know who I was saying it to. Grief didn't hit me all at once. It came in waves. Grocery aisles, empty weekends, songs she used to scream sing in the car, But something else grew alongside it, clarity. I stopped drinking completely. Started running early mornings when the city was quiet. Volunteered at a local high school helping kids with learning disabilities. It felt good. Necessary. The principal noticed. "You ever think about teaching?" she asked. I laughed. "Me? No." Turns out, yes. 5 years later, I stand in a classroom every day. One afternoon, a student stayed back after class. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. Were you always like this?" I smiled softly. "No. I was pretty lost." She nodded like she understood more than I expected. I told her the only truth that mattered. "When you've got too much empty time," I said, "trouble fills it." She thanked me and left. I stayed behind, staring at the chalkboard. I still think about Lennox. Not with guilt, with gratitude. She showed me where the road ended so I could turn around. I didn't save her. That truth lives with me. But her story saved me from becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. And every day I choose differently. I carry her with me not as a warning, but as a reminder.